Okay, whenever you guys are ready.
Hello world. We are the touchy, feely people that everyone talks about and that they complain about. And I'm going to introduce us. First, let me introduce myself. I'm a professional touchy talker. I love to just lay a hand on a person so they can feel what I'm saying and they feel the love when I'm saying it to them. And up next, we have the lovely and beautiful Bree. She is our professional hugger. You're never going to have a day that's down when the beautiful hugging Bree is around. And up next, we have the amazing Aslan, the professional hand holder. She will connect hearts through holding of hands. And last but not least, we have Jay, our professional comforter. Group hug, everything. He's able to recognize anytime anybody needs a certain touch on the arm, touch on the hand, a hug, or just a caring pat on the back. So next we're going to transition into Jay, speaking about what is physical touch.
What is physical touch? Physical touch is nonverbal expression of love. The physical touch of love language typically goes hand in hand with quality time. Physical touch is just not sex. It's simple, innocent touches show how much you love. Land on your partner's shoulder. Most people think physical touch is just about intimacy, when it can be about as simple as holding hands, laying on your partner's shoulder, or a simple hug. According to research, a warm touch seems to set off the release of oxytocin, a hormone that creates sensation of trust to reduce levels of stress hormone cortisol and prefrontal areas of the brain, which help regulate emotions. We use oxytocin to free the brain up for another primary purposes. Problem solving. Taking, for example, you are driving in your car after a heated argument with your spouse, like I did the other night. With a clear mind, you ended up running the red light and getting a ticket. Now had a hug or physical touch action has been played to release oxytocin. The problem-solving area of the mind would have helped avoid this undue anger. Transitional line. All love languages are important to some degree to all people. However, the love language is lower on your totem pole. It can attract misconceptions to its true nature. To touch on this, we have Aslan to hold hand and guide through these falsehoods.
Okay, these are some misconceptions about physical touch. Some people think that it's all about sex or leads into something more because it's actually physical touch. But it's not. It's actually, I'm sorry. It's desiring physical touch for more of a feeling of being seen and feeling safe than it is about sex. Some people feel a sense of protection when touched, like if they have anxiety or something, or just like a hug or anything would make them feel better. Kind of like a father or a mother who reaches out to shield and protect their child. Whereas some people can view this as clingy from a partner who is more into physical touch. Physical touch can mean something simple and stay that way, but most people have misconceptions, will think it will lead into them doing something more. That's why they tend to avoid it and get scared of the thought of actual physical touch. Another misconception is some people, when they're in their relationship and their partner is showing physical touch, they feel like that they have to do physical touch in return, which makes them feel uncomfortable because they feel like because they received it, they have to give it, even though they're not comfortable doing it. Consequently, they feel it's forcing them into doing something that they don't want to do. That's why they avoid physical touch and see it as a bad thing. Surprisingly, the reasons for some people not liking physical touch are the opposite of misconceptions.
Okay, so there are some misconceptions as to why people don't like physical touch, but there's also some reasons that come with it that have logical explanations. Some people may not like touch because they have a history of being sexually or physically assaulted. And that can, and even like something simple as that can bring up false, like they identify physical touch with something that is negative. Therefore, whenever somebody goes to touch them, all they can think about is the trauma that their body has been through, which is very stressful for somebody who has been through something like that, because bringing up past traumas is exhausting. And so people who are sexually and physically assaulted, they do not give their abuser permission to touch them. So whenever they are being touched, and like for us who enjoy physical touch, just like a simple touch, like it's something that's natural for us. Whereas for somebody who that's been taken from them, they don't have that opportunity for this to be something that they give to somebody. So they have to either work through it and learn to grow in that aspect of things, or they just physically shut down whenever they are approached in that aspect. And another aspect in which some people may not enjoy physical touch is maybe they weren't brought up in a household where physical touch was normalized. One of my friends personally, he does not like physical touch in the slightest, because he was raised in a house where you could spend time with each other, but you could sit on the other side of the room. Even with his parents, he was not raised with giving hugs and stuff. And so whenever you go to hug him, he's just really stiff, because it's not something that was an acceptable behavior in their household. And so it's super important to understand that just because somebody doesn't want to touch you, or somebody's like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with that, it does not mean that they don't like you, or it doesn't mean that they don't want to be around you. It's just maybe they have their own reasons as for why they personally do not want physical touch.
So I'm going to emphasize why physical touch is important. It may not be important to everybody, but we all use it in the aspect of life, because physical touch helps us build bonds with other people, build relationships with other people. And also, our skin is the largest organ in our body, and we use it to receive good and bad sensations. Skin-to-skin contact is vital because it helps with not only an emotional and a mental state, but also with your physical health. It can help get rid of anxiety, fear, depression, among different health issues that we go about in life. This makes you feel good, and it just firms up that emotional state in you. But again, she said if you were abused mentally or physically through that touch, it can kind of give an alternate feeling. And I could say that with touch, you know, it transmits a sensation of being accepted and cared for when it comes to that being your love language. When my wife touches me, it just sends me through the roof. It could be a simple touch on the shoulder or a pat on the back. That's why I feel like that love language resonates in all people of languages, because at some point you have somebody that you love in your life that touches you in any type of way, and like just a pat on the back, a hug, and it just brings comfort to you. And one study, it showed that it's found that you have lower levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, on days that you enjoy higher levels of physical touch, like holding hands or hugging. And also, physical touch affects us from birth as well. Because you know how when a child is born, they always give the child to the mother and make the skin-to-skin contact. And in that, it helps slow down the child's breathing, slow their heart rate, and also help them to stop crying, because it gives them a sense of comfort, a sense of protection. Because they were in the womb, they were protected, they were held close, and they were in a calm state. Now they're outside of that. Now when they get close to the mother, they can come back to that. Human touch is our basic primal need. Events and circumstances can cause us to shun it away though. Despite the world's lack of knowledge about physical touch, the world recognizes that in fact it's an important love language during COVID.
Okay, so when the pandemic hit, the US was kind of at a standstill, and nobody really knew what to do. People were struggling to communicate with one another, and they had to get into this rhythm of new ways to communicate with one another. And so like giving gifts, they were able to send stuff through the mail, and people got words of affirmation all over social media. And I mean, every single love language was able to be met except physical touch. Because as soon as you got close to somebody, don't come near me. I don't want your germs. And it was, honestly, it was so stressful, and we all agreed that whenever that happened, it literally, like, our entire body would just kind of, like, tense up, because that's how we express love, that's how we gather love, that's how we are just able to communicate with our love language. And whenever COVID hit, it was so hard to feel anything whenever it came to regulating our own emotions. And like the studies have shown, it helps with anxiety, and it helps with depression, especially for those who thrive off of physical touch. And so whenever it came to a time where we weren't able to touch anybody, even in a simple way where it was like a high five, like we couldn't do that. And so for us, as the love language of physical touch, it was a very anxiety daunting time. And I know it was for a lot of other love languages as well. But just because this is how we thrive whenever it comes to our love language, it is hard for us to put that out there and be able to feel love towards other people.
And up next, we have Aslan with some statistics about the different love languages that are scattered across the U.S.
This shows the different love languages across the whole U.S. And as you can see, the up north, you can say, it was mostly quality time. We had mostly, it was acts of service. And which I thought that was very interesting because I didn't expect that. You can see I'm from Michigan, so that's why it matches with me, physical touch. And yeah, but I think mostly it was quality time over the U.S. Quality time and physical touch kind of look like they're hand in hand in the same. And then this is a gender love language statistics between men and women. And they're almost around the same. As you can see, like women prefer quality time more than men. And for physical touch, it's actually men who prefer that more than women. And this is one of
Yes, by
age group, yeah.
group,
This is the love language statistics by age group. And as you can see, between 25 to 34 is it was mostly quality time, and from 18 to 24 that was also quality time. So throughout they're basing it on age range. Quality time was the number one love language.
And this study was done all over the U.S. with
Mhm.
2,600 people for them to get the averages in which they have now.
So it's important to understand that all love languages matter. It's important that all love languages have to intertwine and intermix. We have to be able to use other love languages to speak to other people. It's just like if I go to Mexico and I don't know Spanish, I may not be able to translate what they're trying to say to me, or they may not understand what I'm trying to say to them, so we get lost in translation. Same thing is said with love language. If I speak physical touch, but you speak quality time, if I'm not receiving the what I need from you, then we get lost in translation. That what causes broken relationships, broken friendship, and broken business partnerships, because people don't understand the language that the other person speaks and makes us intertwine and work together. And for instance, quality time. Quality time is a love language. Quality time is a love language. I keep saying languages. Quality time is a love language that really emphasizes on just being in that space with someone, with their undivided attention, with them just garnering all their focus on you in that place and that time, whether it be 5 minutes, a whole day, or a couple of hours. And I, as a physical touch person, want to learn to be able to speak that language so I can speak to my wife that way, because that's her number one language. Or if I have friends that have quality time, I want to be able to give them my undivided attention so they feel appreciated.
As far as quality time, that fits in part of my category too, but I'm more of a physical touch person, but as well, acts of service is another love language. That's something that I really have. Pretty much, like, I'm the type of person that, I like to give stuff to people without them asking or doing stuff for folks without them having to ask me to do it or not. That's a really major part of being in a relationship or whatever. And again, I would like to shout out to Jazz. Thank you for my gift. Appreciate that. Okay, next.
The reason why other love languages are also important is because not every couple has the same love language. For me, as an example, mine is physical touch, and my husband's is words of affirmation. So, like, if he was to walk by or just, like, okay, like, how did you date or whatever, this is like, okay, but if I was to do the same, it's not. I would have to, like, say something to him, or if he, like, took out the trash, for an example, I'll say, oh, thank you, you did such a good job doing it, to where he feels like, okay, that's his love language. So not every couple has to have the same, you just have to learn how to work together, like I do my part of words of affirmation, and he does his physical touch.
And I agree, mine is physical touch and quality time, and my boyfriend's is giving gifts, which was my lowest. And so I have to go out of my way to understand his aspect of his love language. And so, I mean, one of the things that I've done recently was I wrote a letter and I sent it in the mail. He doesn't know it's coming, okay? It's coming, he just doesn't know it. And that's just one way that I can, through giving gifts and giving back to him in a way where it's speaking to his love language, because that's not something that comes naturally to me. I have to think outside the box whenever it comes to giving gifts. That's not something that comes naturally to me. So in order for us to work cohesively together, especially in a long distance relationship, we have to understand how to work with each other's love languages.
And I believe once we all decide to actually take a intentional effort to learn other love languages, only then can we become better as people in a society, so we can show love in different ways so that we all can come together instead of fighting against each other. I'm not touching you.
I'm
I'm
not
not touching you.
I'm not
I'm not touching you.
But I
But I want you to.
I want you to.
I just,